at Monte Sereno City Hall, sitting with another distinguished Monte Sereno resident and a city council member and a mayor, Burton Craig. I'm sure you already know him. How many years were you on city council? What
8 years.
What years?
2010 through 2018.
Ooh, because I know
Yeah.
we're going to talk about 2019 in a second, but
Yes.
we're sitting here in front of the city seal. So, Quail, tell me about the history of the seal.
Well, the history of the seal is, I don't know.
Nobody ever does.
You're going to have, I did hear a story about it. There was a contest, and
Well, where'd the quail come from?
because there's quail in the area. In fact, this year they had a contest, and they finally named the quail.
I hope they
and
named it Monte.
It's named Monte.
Yeah, oh my goodness. Okay, so the quail
So-
was around way back when.
Way back when,
And-
and I saw some earlier drawings of it. There's a book called The Battle for Serene Mountain, and it's up on our website. And I would encourage all Monte Sereno residents to download it and just kind of peruse through it, because it's interesting to see how Monte Sereno actually came about. And
Well, give us a
was-
synopsis. Tell me,
Well-
how did it come about?
Well, the basic synopsis is that Monte Sereno was just an area. It was unincorporated Santa Clara County. And we're right next to Los Gatos, and Los Gatos is growing, and Los Gatos is saying, hey, there's all of this land that's available that's next to us, and we want to expand as a city, expand our influence, and to be able to bring businesses into the area. And the people who lived here, or let's say a lot of the people who lived here, were not happy with that. One of them was the founder of the city, Admiral Thomas Inglis. And he was an admiral that was one of the key people involved in cracking the Japanese code back in World War II that led to the victory at Midway.
Really?
I don't know how many people know that, but he was a pretty big shot back in the World War II days.
Does he have any family still here?
I understand he does have some family in the area. I don't know if they live in Monte Sereno anymore.
Is his home still around?
I know it's still around. I don't remember where it is.
Okay. Is there a plaque on it, like the John Steinbeck house?
I don't think there is.
Now, you moved into...
Because they really wanted to be, just everyday normal people. They didn't want to draw too much attention to themselves, because the city was founded to really just be a low maintenance, low governance city. And
Has it changed?
it has definitely changed.
It has
just because California laws have necessitated that you have to have I'll call it a professional government. It really is there's a lot of rules, regulations, forms.
Mm-hmm.
It seemed like at many council meetings we were always approving some new report that we had to send to the state, and some new rule that was coming down from the state that we had to incorporate into our local codes and ordinances. And it's just not something you can say, we want to be a city, leave us alone. And
Doesn't work that way.
it doesn't work that way anymore.
Is there any room to expand?
There is no room to expand
so
here
you
anymore.
are at your boundaries.
We're at our boundaries.
There still must be acreage for homes, no?
Well, I mean, there's definitely empty plots in the city, but there's no more room to expand the city per se. Now, the city does have what are called sphere of influences. Well, first of all, should I go back and finish the story?
Of course.
Yeah, we never finished the story.
We never did finish the story.
So the admiral.
Yeah. Admiral, what's his name?
Thomas Inglis.
Yes.
And so a lot of military people lived in this area. And so he organized them like he was running a military operation. He would have his area captains and his block lieutenants, and all the way down the line, and they would go out and talk about the fact that they need to incorporate as a city to protect the area and keep it the rural area that it is from the evil Los Gatos, let's call it that. And
How many people do you think were here at the time?
a little over 1,500 or so.
Okay.
And it was a pretty close vote. I don't remember the numbers, but I want to say 60-40, 55-45, something like that. I mean, it wasn't a slam dunk. There was a lot of effort from Los Gatos to defeat the measure.
Sure.
The developers wanted the measure
Sure.
defeated because the city was founded, as people who have driven in the area notice, there are very few major roads or arteries that go from one end of the city to the other. You basically have Dave's Avenue and even Winchester and Highway 9. Very little of that actually belongs to Monte Sereno. There's just a little strip over by Dave's Avenue that belongs to Monte Sereno. I mean, we're talking a couple of 100 feet of it, and just that one little strip along Highway 9 between Quito and just past City Hall here.
Now, this may be a silly question, and you may have no idea, but if you were, I mean, it's 1.6 square miles, but have you ever walked the whole 1.6 square miles going down each street? I mean, how long would that take?
It doesn't take very long. Well, I mean, when I say it doesn't take very long, it would probably take a good day to do it all.
Okay.
There's about 12 and a half miles of roads.
Oh, I did not realize that many.
Inside of Monte Sereno.
All right, that's big.
That would be
Yeah.
quite a walk, especially since the roads do not go through. So you would have to go down one road, turn around and backtrack, and then so you would definitely be walking more than the 12 and a half miles or so of road that are actually in the city.
So you could get lost in Monte Sereno.
You could
get lost.
Yeah, I mean, you can go down some cul-de-sacs and then come down like a little private driveway and find yourself like, oh yeah, I gotta, you start backtracking and things look different when you're walking down than they do when you're walking up.
Always.
Especially, and also especially since there's this is a very beautiful city in terms of there's a lot of vegetation here, and
I know that's one of your loves.
Yes.
You have been very vocal about loving the beauty and the art of Monte Sereno.
Yes.
And I assume that's one of your convictions. You want it to stay like this.
Yes, I really was focused on keeping the area with its rural look. I mean, it was nice to have very few sidewalks and to have very few streetlights. There were a couple of areas in the city that decided to create a district so that they could bring streetlights into their areas, but as a whole, there are no streetlights in the city of Monte Sereno, and it is so great to be able to walk out on the deck of my backyard and I just get these spectacular views of the moon as it's coming over the Santa Cruz Mountains, and you can look up and it's not a star-filled sky, but I mean it's a lot better than it is in other places in the city.
Is there a chance it won't stay like that?
There's always a chance, yeah. I think there is. There's a lot of effort to increase the density in the area, and no area is being spared right now. So they want to increase the density. But even if they increase the density here, I still think that there is a willingness to keep the rural atmosphere. So you'll probably see maybe a few more duplexes. You'll probably see some higher density houses along the roads that are, let's just say, better suited for that kind of traffic. So for example, along the Winchester corridor, especially since there's at least a little bit of bus service there. But no, I don't really see Monte Sereno itself turning into just this megalopolis of high density housing.
So would the Admiral still be happy?
Probably not.
Probably not.
Probably not.
Too many people, too many. Double what he wanted.
Well, when he was running it, it was pretty much him and a couple of volunteers who were running the city, and that the stories were even up until I want to say the early 2000s that the city manager would still go out and pick up dead animals on the street, that kind of service. But no, it's not that way anymore.
Nothing is.
Sadly.
Sadly.
When I was here, we had a staff of about 6 people. We had the city manager, the city planner, we had a building official, we had a couple of people that ran the front office, and we had our city clerk. And people would say, "Wow, that's way too many people to run this city." And these folks were busy, more than 8 hours a day.
What kind of a budget does it take on an annual basis to run Monte Sereno? Do you know? Well, you should know.
Yeah, when I was on the council, we were running at about $2.5 million a year.
And I have no idea. That doesn't
Well,
sound, it sounds very frugal.
It's pretty frugal, but it really was Figure about $600,000 of that was just for police services. And then a good part of that was to take care of the salaries for everybody, because that was probably another, 400,000
Sure.
or so. Oh yeah, we had a treasurer too, so we did have a full-time treasurer. Treasurer, financial analyst.
Yeah.
And then the rest of it was just maintenance on the city, keeping the roads updated. We had to, pay different contractors to come in and take care of engineering services for the city. Then there's just the basic upkeep and maintenance of City Hall itself. So, but I thought $2.5 million was a pretty reasonable, and we always ran at a break even or even a little bit of a surplus. So we were always able to put a little bit of money in the kitty for the future. In my second term in office, we were able to actually pay off our unfunded pension liabilities, which is probably something you hear about a lot with all of the different cities, and especially cities like San Jose that have unfunded pension liabilities in the hundreds of millions of dollars. It's almost mathematically impossible for it to get paid off.
So
but we were able to do that.
You were able to do that. Do you have anniversary parties every year when it's, or I assume for the 50th, I hope you had some big party in Monte Sereno.
I actually was not on the council for the 50th anniversary.
Did they celebrate?
They had a really nice picnic over at Vasona Park.
Nice.
Yes, that's
for
where
the whole
that's
town.
where I got this,
for the whole
this little
community.
pin right here.
Whoever wanted to go.
Right, anybody who wanted to go, and we all got under the pavilion there, and we took a picture. So it used to be on the wall, and I'm sure it will come back one of these days. But there's a picture of there was probably about 200-300 people that showed up that day, and it was a lot of fun.
That's a
they
good
had
turnout.
a really nice buffet.
That's a good
and,
turnout.
when I was on the council, we brought back the annual city picnic again at, and I say Vasona Park, but the 50th was actually at Oak Meadow. But every year we try to have a picnic at Vasona Park, and that's really nice. It usually gets about 150 or so people to come out.
Which is a Los Gatos Park.
It's a Los Gatos
Does
Park.
Monte Sereno have any parks?
We do not have any
You
parks.
do not have parks, no
but,
parkland.
But all of our park budget goes
Of
to
course,
Los Gatos,
yes.
and that's why the citizens are able to use Oak Meadow just by showing them their driver's license.
So the Admiral will be happy about that.
I think he'd be happy about that. You got to give people, some place to go out and enjoy the wilderness.
So now, were you around during 2000? Maybe it was 2003 when there was the big Christmas light debate. Do you know? Are you familiar with that?
I am familiar with it. That was again before my time, but
Well, there aren't many disturbances that happen in Monte Sereno.
There's very few things that have really put us on the map, but this one put us on the national news.
It did.
We were on the Today Show.
Yeah.
if I
Okay. Tell
remember
us. Share the
properly.
story.
So the story is that there was a gentleman. His name is Alan Arts. Very nice guy. He ran for city council. In fact, I ran for city council and lost before I actually made it onto the council, and I got to run with him, and I met him. Just an absolute pleasure of a person to know. And he has a very nice house on Bicknell Avenue.
Is he still here?
No, he's no longer
Okay.
here. And he would put this really beautiful Christmas decoration. He has a very large estate, and it was just decorated, it's one of those places that you would see on those TV shows.
Sure,
where
the
they
Christmas lights competition.
But it wasn't like extreme lights. It was just a really nice getup. He would have a lot of different figures on his lawn and everything. And he would come out and serve hot chocolate to the visitors. And he also took up a collection so that he would buy toys and he would give them to needy children. And he was also a big supporter of the different public service agencies. He would have a fire picnic a picnic for fire and policemen every year at his house also.
It almost sounds like Billy Jones in terms of how he would raise money for donations to give to charity and wanted the neighborhood to come over. So two very special men. But
when you have really nice houses, and especially since there aren't that many houses in this area that really do up Christmas the way that he did, it became very popular. And again, being very popular means to get to his house, you got to drive there. And to drive there, you got to
go by a neighbor's home.
You got to go by a lot of neighbors. But it really, and he lives at the end of he lives at the beginning of a cul-de-sac. And there was a neighbor a little bit further down that wasn't very happy, and he complained about it. He complained to the city, and like I said, it started to make the news.
And how did that happen?
Well,
you know, Monte Sereno, did he call up the Today Show?
No,
what
I don't think he did. I think I have no idea how
probably
it made
in the
it
newspaper,
on there.
and
it got in the
yeah.
local news, and some producer found it and said, "Oh, you know, here's a story that we should put this on and try to get our ratings up." But because it, when you hear about people that don't like Christmas,
Sure.
people like
yeah.
people tune into those kind of stories.
So how was it resolved?
So it was resolved by him complaining to the city, and the city passed what is unofficially known as the Allen Ertz Law, which basically prohibited public gatherings unless you were to get a permit from the city. And they just basically put a lot of restrictions. It couldn't last for X number of hours. It had to be done within so many days. And by the time you were done, there was no way you could have a Christmas display that had people coming in front of it, even though you yourself have no control who comes in front of your house. So this wasn't something that he planned. He didn't advertise it. He didn't ask people to come. He didn't sell tickets to it. All he did is he served hot chocolate, and he put a donation box out. So the council went ahead and passed it. And of course, that's not the end of the story.
It never is.
The next year, he put a big 10-foot high blow-up Grinch in his front yard. And it was pointing not at the person's house, but kind of in the general direction. And I think that's when it also, and that's really when it made news. It wasn't the ordinance, and it wasn't the number of people and the complaints.
Yeah.
It wasn't even the law, but it was when the Grinch went up. And that's when it all kind of just kind of came to a head. And,
Yeah.
And he was very upfront. He said when he was running for office, he said, "I am not running to repeal this law. I will not bring it up in any of my discussions. And this law the city passed, it's a law that they wanted, and that's it."
Did he continue to put the display up?
No.
No.
That was it. And he donated all the displays, because I mean, there were so many displays. He actually had to have a warehouse to store them. This was like Christmas in the Park in San Jose.
Mm-hmm.
And so he took all the donations and he donated them to a place nowhere in the area, from what I understand.
Yeah, that's a great story.
Yeah,
And then there's
unfortunately not. But.
Well, I know.
But it is an interesting. It's like, wait a minute, how does this? I'll just have to go back real fast and tell you just a little bit of my involvement with the city of Monte Sereno. When I first came to the Bay Area, I moved to Santa Cruz area. I lived in Scotts Valley, and I took a job at Symantec, which was in Cupertino. And so my route to work would be to come up 17, get off at Highway 9, and drive up Highway 9 until I got to the Symantec headquarters, which were right next to the Apple campus, basically. And I'll just never forget, I would be driving and I would see this sign that said, "Welcome to the city of Monte Sereno." And then about 30 seconds later, I would see a sign that said, "Welcome to Saratoga." And I was like, where in the heck is this city of Monte Sereno? Because if you look at it on a map, it doesn't show up anywhere. And then it became even more interesting, because I took a job at Apple, and one of the people that I dealt with at Apple was working in Toledo. I had to go to Toledo, of all places, to work with an Apple developer. And he said that he lived in Monte Sereno. I'm like, that's just too funny. I said, where is Monte Sereno? And he finally explained it to me, and I was like, okay, that's why I don't know.
And how did he explain it? Do you remember?
He's like, it's very small, and you'll probably never know where it is unless you actually go out and look for it. And he said it's just a nice community of homes. And
well, and Highway 9 technically runs through Monte Sereno, which is very unusual.
Yes.
To have a highway running right through
Right.
right through your town.
Yeah, and that was one of the roads that they said, okay, we have to have because those people on that side of Highway 9 wanted to be part of Monte Sereno. So,
Amazing.
But that's just kind of like how I
Yeah.
actually even heard about the town of Monte Sereno. And then it's kind of funny because once I got on the council, you get to go to a number of different government events. And you would introduce yourself and you would say, hi, my name's Burton Craig. I'm a council member for the city of Monte Sereno.
And they'd say, huh?
And you go, yeah, okay. And
Nobody had the guts to say, and where is that?
and where is that? And most people would say, well, most people don't know where cities are, but I was talking to the guy from Santa Clara. And I'm like, dude, I'm right up the street from you.
There's only 15 of us.
Yeah.
15
there's only
cities.
15 cities
Yeah.
in the whole county. He goes, really? And then I went to a trade show and I had mentioned, and this guy said, you're with the city of Monte Sereno. I grew up in Monte Sereno. I never knew that was a city. And he grew up, went to Los Gatos, and he never knew
Never
that this area
realized.
was a city.
Did he never look at a letter that was mailed to his home? Doesn't it say Monte Sereno on
Guess
it?
not.
You know, his mother never said go out to the mailbox and get the mail.
Yeah. So it was always kind of fun. You know, I talked to lots of people in the Bay Area. They'd never heard of Monte Sereno, but
And the people who have heard of Monte Sereno, how do they describe it? What do they think Monte Sereno is? What would you say?
rich homes,
Yeah.
hard to build, rich homes.
Which means wealthy people, wealthy
Yes.
residents.
Yeah, and when I took a seat on the council, it was a hard place to build. Do you want the story of how I
Of course.
really decided to get on the
This is
council?
the history of Monte Sereno.
This is the history of Monte
Yes.
Sereno. All right. I will probably never tell this story again, so I'm going to tell it because I am on the city of Monte Sereno because of a backyard barbecue. And this story starts when my wife found an ad on Craigslist looking for somebody who wished to buy he made custom backyard kitchens, built-in barbecues and, and he said that he would give that person a discount if they would allow him to build it, take it to a trade show, and then he would deliver it to the house. And so we signed up with him. We said, wow, that just sounds like a pretty cool idea. And we had just purchased our house in Monte Sereno. This was back in 2003 even. I think by this time it was 2004. And we called them up and said, sure, we'd love to have this backyard kitchen. And, is there anything we need to know about putting it in? Are there going to be any permits or anything? He said, I've put kitchens in from Napa Valley to San Luis Obispo. I've never needed a permit to put this kitchen in.
I think I know where you're going.
Yep, and and it was a nice kitchen. It really was a nice little
I'm
kitchen. It was
sure.
going to have a fireplace and everything. And we got the drawings. We gave them to our next door neighbor. They said, this looks great.
We
We
want
gave
one
one to the
too.
neighbors on each side.
Yeah.
And they all said, great, no problems. We told them we were going to put a trellis in the back, probably even would have given them a little bit more privacy. And they came in to start working on the trellis, and one of our neighbors was not happy at all. And so we kind of nuked the trellis project, and the backyard kitchen shows up. And the backyard kitchen goes up, and these guys came from Napa to put this in. And they were almost done, but they needed to do a little bit more work. And so they were, just using a screw gun. There was no sawing or anything. But as they were assembling it, and we had made them dinner, so that actually added a little bit more time. And so they probably didn't finish with the project until around 9 o'clock. And so they left and went back to Napa Valley, and the next day we had a visit from our friendly building official who said, I understand that there was work going on here last night after sundown. And we're like, well, yeah, these guys had traveled all the way to Napa. I didn't want to bring them all the way back down again. And yeah, they were screwing some stuff together. And he said, okay, well, and as I'm looking at what they were screwing, you need a building permit for that. I was like, what do you mean we need a building permit for this? He goes, yeah, you need a building permit for it. And we called the guy,
And he said, what?
he said, what? I've never needed a building permit to put any of this stuff in. And then, now we're going back and forth with the cities, and now they're starting to talk about setbacks, and they're talking about the fact that some of this stuff needs to have, concrete bases on it. It's not earthquake proof, yada, yada, yada. All these regulations that we couldn't find anywhere. And so basically the way that they set this thing up for us was that we could not have this where we wanted it. So now we had to hire a giant crane because we had to bring it over trees. So we had to take this thing and we had to lift it and put it into another part of my backyard. And then they came back and said, well, you didn't come and get a crane permit from us.
Oh my gosh.
Well, you didn't tell me I needed, you just told me to move it. You didn't, so, now we're at this point. Then because we had to take the fence down to be able to put the backyard barbecue in the back, well, we had to replace the fence around our pool. And he said, and so we did. We put a new fence. He goes, well, you didn't get a permit for the pool fence. And I'm like, you don't need a permit for the pool fence. You can buy these things online and you put them up. Well, now the fence goes up and he tells me one part of your fence is 1/4 of an inch too high. I said,
So was he just out to get you at that point,
Well,
or was he like this with every permit?
So at this point, we had a little, I'm going to call it street party around our house, and I was just telling some of the neighbors about that, and I said, oh, you're dealing with, and I'm not going to mention any names, well, let me just tell you my horror story. And I mean, then the stories just came over, simple things. I needed to replace a water heater. Next thing I know, I'm trenching through my garage, and I needed to replace my bathroom duct, and then a friend of mine was building a house, and the next thing is that these rules are being instituted where there's again no code in the city ordinances that say that, and he actually called 13 of the other cities and found out that they don't require this. Why is our city
Well,
and so then I started hearing some really nasty things. One person said, you got to run for office, and you got to get rid of that little Hitler's fiefdom that they have over there. And I said, okay, this is a small city. We can't have that many problems. And that's when I decided to run for office the first time.
so was it easier to do some building improvements and renovations now?
Well, I think it was, but even before I came and became involved on the council, I became involved on the Cultural Commission. Since I didn't win, I said, well, I'm going to find something else, and I want to be involved in the city, and so I joined the Cultural Commission, and then I started talking with different folks on the city council, and some other folks had gotten on the council and had heard a lot of stuff that I had talked about, so they were already starting to implement rules. And when I got on the council, I worked with the city manager because he understood that there were a lot of issues too. And I think at least by the end of my first term, I started to hear not as many complaints, and I actually heard a number of compliments regarding the building process in Monte Sereno. One of the other council members that you'll be speaking with tomorrow, Marshall, he actually put together a boot camp, or that was one of his projects, was to get a Monte Sereno building boot camp so that people knew exactly what the procedures were to improve your home, build a home inside of Monte Sereno.
Well, I remember the nightmare when I was interviewing the couple that used to own the John Steinbeck home, and when it was becoming a historical landmark, and there were so many rules to follow. And
yes.
So are we a city of rules?
We are a city of rules.
Well-behaved people, because they have no choice.
Yeah. I was a Boy Scout leader for a number of years, and two of the other Scout leaders owned construction companies. And both of them told me that they would not take on jobs in Monte Sereno, and that they knew a lot of other contractors that would not take on jobs in Monte Sereno because of the building policies, not just the building code, but the building policies that this city had.
And why do you think that was?
Well, because
The Admiral certainly didn't want it like that.
well, and I can't speak for him because I've never met him.
Me neither.
But the city councils prior, every city council has their own
Sure.
their own let's just call it a personality. And city councils used to be very permissive, and that's why you'll see some very large homes, and you're like, how did this house get built in Monte Sereno? And then you'll talk to somebody else that I would look at their house and go, why is your garage over here and not attached to your house? And they'll say, well, you can thank the city council for that.
Okay.
Because one person complained about where I wanted to put my garage, and so, everything had to get moved because of that. And I'm like, well, that's not right either. That's your garage. It should be attached to your house. What do you do when it rains? He goes, I get wet.
Well, I guess was it 2019, so you had just gotten off the council. 2019, wasn't there a huge to-do with the makeup of the council and the politics, and some crazy things were happening in 2019?
There really was. I don't consider that a shining moment for the city of Monte Sereno.
Part of our history, so share with us a little bit.
So the council that took over when I was termed out, they did not like the process that we used to pick the mayor in the city. And it is something that had been going on for many years before I was on the council, and a number of cities followed the same practice.
And what was that practice?
And so the practice was generally that the vice mayor would become the mayor, and then he would then select who he would like for the vice mayor, and they were chosen from people who had been on the council for the prior year. That way you could evaluate them and make sure that they had at least some idea of how the city meeting should be run. If they didn't show up to meetings, you didn't want that person to be a mayor or vice mayor.
Sure.
And very rarely did anything ever happen. There was one time when I was on the council that there was a person who was really trying to make sure that another council member didn't become mayor. And that was kind of another dark period.
It happens,
and
yeah.
It did happen, but this one kind of ended up playing out where one of the incoming council members, who was a lawyer, he interpreted the law different than the way we were running it, and he then started to threaten all sorts of filings and with the Brown Act and everything. But eventually, he just said, "You know what? I'm just going to take care of this when I'm on the council, and I'm just going to do it my way." And so the mayor who was selected at the time was removed. That was the end result. But the way that he was removed, I thought, was pretty poor. They said a number of derogatory things about them. They said a number of things that were just flat out untrue that I'm able to prove because I read the emails that this one council member brought up and said was the reason that he was doing this. And that mayor ended up resigning from the council altogether. And that just wasn't the way that we would do things in Monte Sereno. And it's so funny about how these guys were talking about their values and the traditions of the city. Well, this was a tradition of the city in the way that it had been run a number of times, and just to watch what they did, it really, and it was another.
And did the residents care, or is this just something that was
No,
going on?
a lot of people showed up, and this was. I was just going to add this. It was so funny because the guy who really led the charge, one of the things that he said, because he was involved with kind of leading a charge about the zoning that happened over at the Baptist Church, which Lon Allen just spoke about. And one of the things that he brought up was that how can you, city council, pass this when so many people in this room are telling you that this is not what they want? And that night, it was an absolute packed house. It was an overflowing house. And I want to say approximately 40 or so people spoke. One person spoke for it. One person was kind of ambivalent about it. And everybody else spoke against it and said, how could you do this? This is wrong. And they went ahead and did it anyway. So again, you're talking one way, but you're doing another. And and that's just the way it worked. And to me, it's a black mark on our city the way that was run.
That's tough words. And so I can see it still bothers you. Still
It
bothers
does.
you. So, I mean, you love the city. So what do you know about this city that maybe most of the residents don't know? Any nuances? You mentioned values and traditions. Is there anything that you think should be part of the history of Monte Sereno that people should know about?
Yeah, there's a number of items. I mean, of course, there's a number of high-profile people that have lived here. I don't know, I know Juan mentioned John Steinbeck, and I think a lot of people know about the John Steinbeck.
Who else don't we know about?
Jack Tramiel from Commodore. He's the guy who founded Commodore Computers. Alex Smith used to live here. A number of, I don't want to name and he's moved, so I can mention his name, but there's a number of other sports figures, and people like Monte Sereno. It's a beautiful area. It's,
Well,
it's a great place to bring up kids. We've got great schools here between Day, Fisher, Los Gatos, and even Saratoga, which I have to say it that way because all my kids went to Los Gatos, and they beat them in football every year.
Lon Normandin of Normandin Chrysler Plymouth.
Yeah.
I mean, he lived here. He just moved to Saratoga, but he lived here for decades.
Yep.
Decades. Any other names we need to know?
No, like I said, I probably should respect privacy.
Sure, I
There's
understand,
some
but
people that are,
if they've
again,
moved out.
I don't know anybody who's moved out, though.
Yeah, why would you, right?
Right. Once you come here, it's like Hotel California.
I like that. What else?
Except we're a lot nicer.
And you know what? That's how we're ending this.
Yeah.
Except we're a lot nicer. You have been a delight. You have been full of information. You belonged in this video on the history of Monte Sereno.
I thank you for letting me come and talk about it.
The city's lucky to have you here. This is it for you, right? You're never moving.
I'm all done. I'm probably not going to be moving.
This is your home.
Yeah.
Your forever home.
Yep. Yeah, we've made it a really nice place over the years. So.
Yeah, I'm coming over to have some food out of that kitchen in your backyard.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Come on over.
Yeah. Burton Craig, thank you so much for sharing your stories of Monte Sereno. They were wonderful.
Oh, you're very welcome.
And he's got quails on his
got
socks.
Quails. I still have my quail socks.
You can't really see him, but he's got quail socks in honor of the quails of Monte Sereno. There you have it.